Okay, this is the Nephew SIG Release Meetings for May 15th, 2023. So go ahead, Rado. You can go ahead and share.
All right,
the agenda.
Let me try to share this. How's the visibility?
Looks good.
Yeah.
Looks good. Okay.
Isn't the first one Bala's overall sprint status check?
Yeah, I think according to me, I mean, yeah, I think once Rado finishes, we can go there.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Rado.
I can probably speed run through my points, and we can get back to it. All right. So for code scanning and checking, scan code tests are done in a lab. I'm just working on a good way to present them in a builds. So that's gonna give us an overview about the licenses that we have, the components licensing that we're using, just to be on the safe side if we're not including something that's not compatible and so on. And problem right now with it is presenting the results. So the scan code even offers the tool to graphically visualize results of the scan. For this, you need this giant JSON file, which it produces. And by default, Perl doesn't have any good way of presenting the artifacts. So what is done in Kubernetes project, in Istio project, and many others that are using Perl, they are using the GCS web application from Kubernetes project, which is basically like a web front end for your Google Cloud bucket, which you can just browse the given directory using the simple web interface, and you don't have to authenticate. Otherwise, if you just give the bucket URL, it will be only available to the people which can access the project in Google Cloud. So I'm working on implementing this thing today. It's been giving me some hard time with the permissions, but yeah, I guess it's halfway done. So after this, every scan code job, you'll be able to just view from the browser if you want to download this JSON or something to run it in the visualizing app or to parse it somehow. That will be much easier than, for example, just copy its contents from the output of just build log. All right, for artifact builds, Docker images build for all these components mentioned here. It's in a PR, just needs the LGTM. It works the same as for free 5GC build, so it's nothing really complicated to review. So after the call, if anyone feels particularly,
I think I approved it, Rado. I think you can do LGTM on that one. Since I was the first reviewer, I just put approve there. Probably you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it needs LGTM to be automatically merged, and you cannot LGTM your own PRs. So somebody else has.
I'll have a look. I'll have a look, Rado. Okay. Yeah, that is two more that we need here probably, but I'll send you offline. Yeah.
All right. So I mean, right now it's just most of the time the infrastructure is pretty idle, so we can just if that's too much even. For now, we can just use it as a load test to see how it will behave. I will just have a look on some graphs afterwards, and then we can disable if it's too much. I just basically went through the repo and I just enabled anything that had.
Is there any way that any of these profiles can actually be tested out? I mean, if it is only LGTM that you need, or is there anything you want us to test or review? It seems like you just need LGTM. Doesn't matter even if you review or not. Just trying to understand. Is there anything we need to go test out as part of this PR, or anything that we can test to confirm? Yeah, it's right. This is right.
No.
Yeah, I think we found an issue or something like that.
Yeah, that's. You would actually have to have a second Brow infrastructure to test it. I mean, this can be run locally. So if you take the command that it's issuing from the YAML file or the changes and just paste it and run it through your Docker or a Podman or whatever with the same arguments for the image that you have mentioned in the job itself, it should give you the same results that running in a browser. That's the way. I guess you could run it on a pulled repository and see if it produces the Docker image. And to upload it, you would have to put your own Docker token, Docker Hub token. But otherwise, it's doable to test it manually. Otherwise, we would have to have kind of like something like a lab infrastructure that's publicly available to run it there, and then based on the results to approve it in our main infrastructure. But we'd actually have to have like an exact copy of what we have now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's more a pro configuration file, which I took a look. Obviously, I mean, it looks okay. I mean, two other things. I mean, we may need one more PR, Rado. I think for two things I would say. I think one for the controller manager that runs all the controller. I think Sandeep was working on that one. I don't know whether there's a Docker file there yet. That is one that controls all the controllers on the management clusters. That is NF deploy controller and the other the gRPC aggregator, things like that. And also that is, we need that one. And then one for the UI, I guess. I think UI is separate, I guess. So I think we need those two as well. I don't think
I need to Bala, I need to resource backend probably, right? It should be.
Yes, resource backend too. Yes, too. Yes, yeah, that one too. Yes.
Right. So if they have Docker files to produce images, I'll just create another PR. So
yes,
this will be
another
kind
PR,
of,
not the part of the same PR. I was just mentioning since we are there.
Yeah,
another PR.
yeah. So absolutely, I will add it. All right. So for miscellaneous stuff, as I was saying,
And
working
then,
on. Yep.
Tall has raised his hand. Tall.
Yeah, I think Rado might be already starting to explain how it works. I've looked at the PR. It seems that it's in test infra, and it seems to be a lot of kind of copying and pasting of the same task per container, right? Which is fine.
Yep.
But does it mean that if we want to build artifacts from other repos, we should do pull requests to test infra to just add?
You can actually copy that part in your .prow YAML config in your repository and just do it kind of like besides of the SIG release. That was the whole point of this having this .prow YAML files. I just added it into main infrastructure just to kind of speed things up and not to bother you guys with the prow details, which are it adds some adds some load to you already have your plate pretty full. So after this,
I guess my question is, do we have two options, right? We could actually, there are certain advantages to centralizing all our artifact building in one place rather than having it scattered, right? Because let's say we want to change the method in some way, then we'll have to look for all the different repositories that have that in their profile and do separate PRs. I wonder if, as a team, we would prefer actually, I think there's an advantage actually of having it here. I don't know if test infra is the best place because it's not really related to test infra, right? It's more about artifact generally, but maybe we can think of another repo or another place where we centralize all of this, all of our artifact building. I'm not sure. I'm just raising this as a question for what we would prefer.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of awkward though. Prow was meant as a testing framework rather than full-blown CI/CD thing. So over time, it was just more convenient for people to use it as a CD part of CI/CD. Some projects are just using external builders for it, so they are just using some services, let's say in Docker Hub, to build artifacts. Some are using Prow like we're doing here, so using like a KO or Kaniko or whatever to produce those images. There are different approaches, so it's pretty elastic. So it's I guess up to you guys, whatever you want. It is convenient to have this all in one place. For now, it looks like a mess a bit because it's all in one file. It can be split to subdirectories as a jobs and then source them from main config file. But then we will have to upgrade the version of Prow that we have. And I don't want to do it just before R1. So that's one of the things that we just don't do on Friday and before the releases. If you don't want to have bad time.
No, it's totally fine. I actually think this might be even good for us moving forward, because it's true that we're not doing traditional CI/CD here, right? We don't have a production environment. However, building container images, yes, we use it for publishing our artifacts for the general community use, but we're also needed as part of our test builds, right? So sometimes we might want to test container images, we probably will, that aren't tagged yet for a specific release, right? We want to see that we want to do end-to-end testing, say, with the current state of the code, right? So we will want to build images that are current.
Yeah. So what's in current configuration? There's the same build for commit and the release. So for the first one runs every commit, and we'll see how it goes. If what we have in our infrastructure has enough oomph to build it in timely manner, and if not, we can adjust it. And the other one is to produce images based on release tag. So it will build and tag it with release tag. So for current testing, for testing the current build, you can just use these ones from build from every commit, right? So they will be tagged with build ID from Prow, so you can just backtrack what it was built from and to check like a build parameters and stuff like this.
Right. There are some projects. A good way sometimes to do it is to tag the release with a Git commit. So we'll be able to know exactly what we're running in the test, right? With a hash of the Git commit, for example, in the tag.
For a commit builds or for a release?
For a commit build, not for release.
All right. Yeah. So I can change it for SHA. Yeah.
So to your point, Tal, I think probably I'm not suggesting anything to change with R1. Going beyond R1, we have a repo for SIG release, right? Probably I have a SIG release could be a candidate for this kind of a thing where we publish artifacts, build installers, all those things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can move it to that one once we finish the R1 release.
Yep.
Yeah. Vish, you have your hands raised.
So a general question, where else can somebody, who pulls in the code can build their own image, if they want to? Is it the only location, or is it also in the, for example, you're actually looking at on the screen, interface function. If I wanted to just locally, I wanted to build that interface function image. Is it possible?
Yeah, we've got
today.
As far as I know, we've got a Docker file in every
okay
repo right now, so you can use this one.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to clarify
Yeah,
that.
we have a Docker file and a make file, which in every
Okay, to
repo.
make
so-
the container, make build the image or something like that. Okay.
Yes, yeah. And you
Yeah, so-
can override the registry and stuff like that. So you are able to change tags and stuff like that if you want.
Thank you. I got my answer. Thanks.
All right, and the one thing more from miscellaneous. I'm also working on a method of adding a tag, creating a tag by a proud job. It was requested by a John. Don't really know the details. What's the deal with it? Just for one repo, it would be a convenience to have these tags created automatically because it's linked with some other functionality or something. So Proud doesn't have this ability by its own. You can, stitch something up from some scripts and so on. But I'm just looking into implementing it rather like a plugin for a Proud and just doing some juggling with scripts. But it's just a side project, I guess. And yeah, that's about it for today from my side.
Awesome. Thanks a
Okay.
lot. I
Thank
think
you.
that's bulk of it. So Stephen, to tell you the other things that is not covered by Rado. So other two important things from the SIG release perspective. This is one of the main items, having the build pipeline. I think we made a lot of progress there.
Mhm.
Building block. So the other two items are the test bed. Test bed is one thing. I think we have made some progress there as well. I think we'll have some more concrete requirements towards the end of this sprint where we have a code freeze planned. The other tasks that I added that are in this sprint, but most likely we will not get to it, but we'll go to the next sprint is the two user doc stories, Stephen. I added one for the user doc and one for installer doc. So I think those are also expected out of our group here. I think that will also most likely roll into the next sprints when we actually have a more solid view of.
Right. I don't think we really know what the user doc would be like yet until we do integrations and see what kind of adjustment we'll make. And I don't even know what the UI progress is for this matter.
Yeah, I think John's was saying that they are making some progress, but they have some. I think they had to fork or something since the folks they were not able to directly contribute to KPT because of the CLA issues.
Okay. Well, otherwise we do like just line commands all the way.
Yeah.
But even then, we have to know the package names and things to clone, the prep works of where the package is supposed to be at. I think until integrations, all these things people are very focused on just their own components.
Yeah.
At this point.
Exactly. But the good progress is this one. We have the build pipelines now.
Yes.
And there is some kind of integration test bed and some installer progress is also done by Wim. Wim, I mean, do you mind pitching in there? I mean, the whole installer story of using Nefio for Nefio. Yeah.
Yeah, we're installing Nefio with Nefio basically. That's
Exactly.
the big picture. Or the high level picture. But so we are creating packages for let's say clusters and for repos. And so we're using, for example, Cluster API to build a Docker cluster and stuff like that. So that seems to be working. And we use the package variants and package variant sets to scale them out and stuff like that. So, yeah, so it's basically we are using what we have built for network functions for deploying a Nefio basically, and the rest of the component.
But then when all the ports and everything needs to be part of the cluster already, when that happens?
Yeah, so that's the only prerequisite we have, right? We need a Git and a ports, but then from there onwards we deploy automatically.
And that also means that we will have to have management cluster manually set up.
Yes, management cluster manual. But so if you look to the playbooks that we had at the beginning, it's reduced to almost nothing. So there is basically hardly anything that you need to get started. Just you have to create a kind cluster for now. It could be any cluster, by the way. But for the testing, we use kind. But it could also be bring your own cluster. And I threw a few packages. We install Porch and Git, Git, and from then all the rest is automatic. Is using Nefio principles.
Okay.
So the prerequisites that we had in the past are very minimal. So we only need kept and kubectl, and then
Okay. So I guess that part goes to Vish and I guess Victor's not here. That you
they are working.
That part of things would be integrated into test infra. So the test infra would be spin up using that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have shared, Ravi and I had actually shared that which ones we need to use if we continue to use Ansible scripts, the very minimum thing that we need that has been done. And even very early on, I think Rado actually as a POC has already a pro job to bring up a cluster. I mean, all the clusters, right? Basically, we need to go ahead and make some changes there to edit, to just bring up just the bootstrap cluster.
Okay.
And we started to integration testing and stuff like that. We start to integrate that whole thing as we speak. So that's ongoing right now.
Yeah, so that's the official setup. So in terms of test infra setup, I guess this is still inherent from the ONE Summit, right? So we're creating for workload clusters, we're creating one for everything outside of UPF, and then one for UPF. Is that what we're doing now for the tests for the integration test?
I think that
a Vish question.
I mean,
the integration test. I mean, you mean the end-to-end test? Because I think
end-to-end test. Yeah. A test that isn't just running a Go test type of test.
Yeah. So at this point of time, like I said, we have those 4 clusters. So we just need to rely on only one of them. And whenever Victor and Wim's way of bringing up those clusters, the other workload clusters becomes Nefio, or what do you call it? Nefio deploying Nefio. Then we just need to call
that installs all the management cluster pieces, I would imagine.
That will install the packages, yes. So I think one of the basic thing I was telling last week, at least, saying there was that as at least to claim victory or to say that we have made some progress would be that once we bring up those the bootstrap cluster, we probably need scripts that will actually go pull those Nefio management, the system packages, which will install Porch and all these other functions, the KPT functions.
So now the test, not now, but I guess we inherit from the ONE Summit. The test infra would be creating 3 workload clusters by default. So those are created as part of bootstrapping of the test infra.
No, I think with this only one, right?
So management clusters is also created by Ansible.
Yes,
as Wim just said.
Only the management cluster will be it will get
but then the rest of the clusters is not created by anything, right? So you still have to manually create them.
No, that's what they're saying, right? If you listen to what Wim and Victor, if I understand right, the plan is to actually even create the workload clusters by just using KPT files.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so
we have that working. That's working, by the way. So we basically deploy. See what will happen, Stephen, is that so there is a package for clusters, right? Okay, and then you create a PV. So you create a package variant set to say I need 3 clusters, right? And it will create 3 clusters.
Okay.
So that's basically what was there, yeah. And so the PVS.
And then there's something to register that into like cluster context and stuff like that onto the management cluster system?
At the moment, that's still manual, right? So that's
Okay.
otherwise we had to build.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether we'll get there.
Yeah, because
But-
otherwise no one is going to fan out.
No, for sure. But at the moment,
Yeah.
this will still a manual. I suppose that's part of the scripts that to do. But we
Okay,
no. Cluster context is part of that that thing. Yeah. So it's part
Okay.
of the package, but it's
Okay.
kind of a hard coded. So there's no status reflected from the real thing.
Okay.
So but cluster context is kind of there, and it's it's a static file.
I do want to say that the agreement I have with John for integration perspective is the NF topology controller would assume that the Git repo deployment repo name of the Git repo would be the name of the cluster.
Yes, that's what you
Because
have.
yeah, because
that's
my
exactly
code my code basically extract cluster name just by doing that.
Yes, so and that's exactly what it is at the moment. So the name of the cluster is the same as the name of the rep.
Okay. Okay.
The name of the Git repository, or what do you mean by name of cluster, Stephen?
The name, so the name of the cluster, quote unquote, would be extracted from basically the name of the GitHub repo. So the deployment repo name, I assume, is the cluster name.
Okay, so we assume that there's a repository kind with that name.
Then
Well, there's
the name of a repository would be all that name.
Okay, yeah. So there's a CR, right? A Porch CR. There are actually two. Config sync has its own repository kind, which is different from the Porch one, but we mean the Porch repository, right?
I think what he means is the Git repo. I think that's
yeah.
what you mean.
So more specifically, when I get a package revision, the repository name would be the cluster name.
Okay, but it is indirect. There is like a CR called of kind repository in Porch, which has kind of all the definitions of how to connect actually to the Git repo.
Yeah, and that's also called the same as the cluster, by the way. So.
Yeah.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily always have to map.
I mean, for now.
Yeah, for now, yeah, makes it easy. Yeah.
Otherwise,
If you
I have to
had a
set a
region one
label.
cluster, you want to have a region
Yeah.
repository. Yeah. But
I mean, there are multiple ways to get that, but then
Exactly.
ease of coding, for now.
Right.
Anyway.
I mean, we have the potential to actually use one deployment repository for many sites.
Yeah, when we get to that, we'll
Right.
Yeah.
Just clarifying that. Actually, it sounds hard coded, but it's actually quite flexible because of that indirection.
Yeah. Okay, so that's cool. So those are created. Okay, I guess I'll give the ball back to Bara. You can kind of ping the current status.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, Steven. I mean, overall, we are making progress on the installer,
Okay.
packages, deployment, test bed. Obviously, there are some changes from the testing perspective based on what we just discussed, right? Instead of we are spinning up only one cluster instead of multiple clusters, things like that. The main thing is this is Monday, so we have one more
Yeah,
week.
it is. So one more week until we do integrations. So
Yeah, so one more week. Ideally, our goal is to have code freeze from all the groups, all the 3 automation groups in the release group. The code freeze, and then plan is to start integration testing from next Tuesday, and then we'll have at least one sprint doing integration testing. Obviously, you'll find a lot of chinks, fix them, fix the bugs, and also write the docs. And then the last 1 week is
within the
Yeah.
technically speaking, it's now 3 weeks, but yeah.
That's the
So particularly for this SIG,
Yeah.
the most important thing would be, obviously Rado did an amazing job on the CI/CD pipeline, so I guess we have less to worry about there. How are we doing on test infra for readiness if the code is saying, oh, let's do integrations? Is there let's say by the end of the week or by next Tuesday, again, in this case, is it possible if, let's say, if I want to do a test only for this. I actually I don't even know if Vim's pieces are well integrated with the rest of the package management modules yet. But then from the side of the operator, we haven't done much integrations from what this package specialization is generating versus what the operators would accept. So if we want to do like that level of testing, just take out two pieces and try to integrate, do we have the infra to do so? So more specifically, we have to have Git repos, we have to have something that runs on management clusters, and we have to have something created in workload clusters for operators to run.
So basically, you mean you have the blueprints, and the blueprints are specialized and pushed to the deployment repository, and it gets approved. And can we actually make sure that deployment repository that gets updated, can it get pushed to either the workload clusters, right?
Yeah. So something. So I don't know how Vim stuff is unit tested without PBS, or whether you can just invoke a cap command directly to render the packages.
So we are testing. We can even give you the output right now, Stephen, because we have.
Yeah, that would be one way. That would be one way. If you get the output, I can ask the operator guys to just use the output and see if we can spin up the SMF, UPF, and all that stuff directly.
Yeah, so that's one thing. We have two ways to test. One is we can test without porch. So we have a test infra that can hydrate all the specialization functions in the pipeline, but without relying on porch. So we can just take a package in and we just render it out, right? So that's not yet checked in, but we are. It's almost ready. So this will run by every check-in. We will validate whether nothing is broken, right? And then we are having a test with porch, and where you actually run all the specializers and the backend and stuff like that. But then we are more end-to-end. So what we are checking in is, so we have unit tests for each of the functions, and then we have what we call end-to-end integration test, but without relying on porch, if you will. So we created some stop functions. But so with that, you can actually see the output that we generate.
Okay.
So another thing to clarify or to add, if today you have an end-to-end test, because we know we have iterated and we have hardened whatever came out of the post workshop. If you have any test case that you want to actually pro job to run, the pro job has already been created, where it creates a management cluster and three, the region 1, edge 1, and edge 2 clusters are up and running. And if you have tests, it can be invoked and it can be run. So that goes to the individual groups, the workload team and the the specialization team, the package management team, if they want to run that.
Okay.
But the tests have to be written.
Yeah. So okay.
Because this is more like, I'm thinking this is more like a fallback. But once Vim's and Victor's new stuff comes in, just the management cluster, which will actually bring up all the other clusters, we can fall back to that. So we can proceed with that. But there is now there is a fallback plan, or there is something POR, plan of record, that is proven to work. It is there. Okay. If that makes sense.
Have we done any tests to execute the test infra?
That is what I was trying to say last week to John, and I was asking in general, like, hey, is it okay? Does it make sense to have some sort of a base test? The base test being, we bring up all the clusters, and we go pull a package, and we just verify saying that porch is running, and all these functions are running. That is something before I went on my recharge day on Thursday we spoke about, and I'm trying to look into that further, at least to have something in place, a base test that can be used by others to see how they can build on top of that for their other scenarios.
But you have executed something where a dummy commit, for example, is checked in, and then a PR has been posted and then because I think you mentioned that one time on Slack that you want to dynamically create the setup when a check-in is coming in, or whether or not Prow has the
Yes.
ability to distinguish one that needs to be run the full test versus not.
So
But yeah.
what I was suggesting then was, as part of merging a PR,
Mhm.
we want to make sure that we run end-to-end tests and it passes
Mhm.
before merging the PR. So there are two scenarios, right? As soon as you push a PR or a commit, tests are run, and the developer will get feedback saying that, hey, if any other test failed or anything like that.
Okay.
And
But then at least the part where a PR is posted, and I guess you do it before approve or after
before
LTTM?
merge. What I'm
Okay.
saying is the PR can
Then-
be given LTTM.
Then so the actual work. So some dummy check-in, and then you set up the entire setup as part of the pre-submit, I guess, work. That has been tested.
I don't. Sorry, can you elaborate?
So you don't need a real check-in to test the creation of the setup, right? So at least
Oh,
the
yeah,
creation of the
yeah.
setup. Yeah.
I think the Pro bringing up the test infra.
Mhm.
In general, a VM with 4 kind clusters has already been done. It's been done
Okay.
for like last 4
Okay.
weeks. So thanks to Red on that.
Okay. So it's
Yeah.
just a matter of turning it on once we have the test cases.
Yes, it's a matter of turning it on once we have the test cases.
Okay.
And that is where I was like saying last week that maybe I'll just go ahead and start actually doing a test wherein, we have an empty cluster, all empty clusters, and then just pull the management related packages, push it out to the management cluster, and then have a verification run to say, make sure that the packages are there,
Mhm.
and that will be like the base test.
Okay.
Okay. That is something that's what I was saying on Thursday, and I plan to work on that this week.
Okay. And then, well, I guess someone will be publishing packages. That probably mostly Vim's group, I would imagine.
I think there were some example packages and all those bunch of things being published, and hopefully, I think there was some reorganization happening, and Bala might have some information on that. The
So
Nephew system.
publishing
Nephew system.
packages under test.
We are publishing 3 packages. Yeah, 4, I think. So again, different people are working on it. I think for one of them, Vim, myself, and Vish are tagged on to one. So basically, there is a management system package. So that system package contains Porch, config sync, UI, and the controller manager. Yes, those are the components of the management cluster. So that controller manager contains all the controllers that runs in the management cluster. So that is the system package. And then there is a workload cluster package that only contains config sync. It only contains config sync because the idea is that we'll be using Nephew to push changes to deploy the operators, etc.
Okay.
With whatever principles that Vim explained using Nephew. And then there'll be one more packages for IPAM backend. Basically, that will be used as a reference implementation. So basically, we'll tell the user that if you do not have any other, ideally, but obviously in the R1 they will use it. But ideally, we'll saying this is a reference implementation of IPAM backend. Install it if you do not have anything else. So those are the 3 packages. So on the management cluster, the flow is expected to be management cluster user will install the system package, the IPAM backend package, and on the workload cluster, the config sync will be installed in the workload cluster, and then rest of the magic is done by the thing that Vim is working on. Vim and Victor are working on.
Or at
But
least
config sync
initially
is
for
also
me.
automatically installed, Bala, with the approach that we have.
when an edge cluster is created, this should be installed, basically.
Yes, but are you
Yeah,
using?
Correct. Yeah. Yes, we are. Yeah, we are installing the config sync automatically. Yeah.
Okay, but for that, are you using that package, config sync package, separately or?
Well, there is a bootstrap controller. There's a bootstrap controller that does that. So when a new cluster comes up, it installs.
Okay. Okay.
And then the network function operators are installed by who? Who's installing that?
I think according to John's, if I were to believe John's thing, that will also be installed by this. So when
See, we create a package variant. See, what we can do is at the end of the day, we just have to create a PVS, right, for it, and it will happen automatically, right? So
Okay. So that needs to be going
basically
first
we need
before
to- we need
the rest of the actual packages are going in, right? For network function.
yes.
I'm just,
Yeah, we
I
haven't
just trusted
thought the full
system.
thing through yet.
Yeah. I just trusted the system would do the right thing. So
This is
obviously-
on which workload cluster?
No,
All of
the
them.
operators, right? There is
all
one.
of them where you're going to deploy, let's say FreeFiGC, then the FreeFiGC operator needs to be installed at the moment that you decided you're going to do with FreeFiGC on the target clusters.
Yeah, that's all the workload clusters.
So I mean, the package is there. I think Wim, I just want to understand the workflow there. So is the Bootstrap controller pushing that also?
No, only config sync
Only confixing. Okay.
and the certificate and the tokens and stuff like that.
See, because those operators should actually be reviewed, should be proposed and approved.
No, not
Yes.
that one.
No. Wait. So
No, these
So,
operators.
okay, what we are focused on right now is to have the base infra ready, right? So of course, because you need config sync to get artifacts to the workload cluster, right? Now, the process to deploy, let's say, the operators and stuff like that is similar to how we deploy network functions, if you will. But it's true that Steven says is that they need to be installed before you can deploy the artifacts for the workflows, right? So for the network function. So right now we are assuming that the guy that installs Nephew is first installing those operators right now and then installs the artifacts to deploy network function. So
Yeah,
we can
my thing is
probably
based
do
on
some
whatever I did
automation.
for the workshop. We had to push that operator. We had to go create from an external blueprint from the UI.
Correct.
That's why I'm saying it has to be proposed, published,
Yes.
and approved.
Yeah, you're right. It's still the same. It's still similar to what we did in the
workflow.
workshop.
That's the workflow
right,
I'm familiar
right.
with.
Yes.
So just to clarify, I hope everybody knows this, but we don't have to install the kept functions. They're pulled on demand. So it's only the operators that we need to install.
The kept functions are running on the management cluster.
Correct, they are. This is actually an interesting aspect that I hope in the future we might want kept functions to run in their own kind of runner space, possibly another machine. Kept functions can be very heavy. They might need to interact with other external systems. So is the management cluster the best place to run it? Maybe sometimes, right? Because it's actually running as part of the porch infrastructure there. But yeah, there might be an option in the future to delegate that kind of work elsewhere. But the end result should be the same, right? It just kind of, where is it running? Anyway, not important for this discussion.
Okay.
So I mean that the important thing is from the user perspective, we need to document the steps. Like ideally, I was thinking, like when we install, for at least for R1 is opinionated FreeFiGC based, right? So when the install is done, it will set up this management cluster, and then obviously the it will install all the system packages, and then we will do. So when the
So
controller
the user experience now would be Ansible to create management cluster, and it would, and then they would do a cap applied or
that should be done.
render or whatever to push also all the controllers and things that needs to run on management cluster, and then the next cap commands to
Even
create-
that, Stephen, you can decouple. Even that we can decouple, by the way, right? So because in theory, whether they need the IPAM backend can be swapped out. We use Cluster API right now to manage clusters. So you could do it all in one, right? To make it, but then we have a very opinionated way of which operators and how Nephew is used. So you could go to a second model to say, okay, the customer selects the artifacts or the functions, whether he uses Cluster API or he wants GCC or he wants cross-plane, he could, in theory, select that.
Okay.
Right. So that's so in other words, there is an option to basically allow someone to say, okay, I want to swap this for that and that, and he just uses all pieces.
So Wim,
we could do that.
Just for all of our understanding, let's say we have nothing, like just a VM is there. Can you just summarize the user experience? So we want to set up everything. For example, let's say a user wants to play with Nepio and he has just created a VM or a bare metal system. And then can you please brief what exactly the user would do?
So the VM is created with, I think you need CAPTs, you need kubectl, I think we are installing, and I think that's it, right? And kind, yeah. So these are the three things that are installed on the VM. Then we have a script. I think it's Ansible, but I think Victor has both, but as a bash script or a shell script versus Ansible. So then we create the kind cluster, and we do kept live apply of what you can say is Nephew system, right?
Yeah.
And that will also register the Nephew packages and our blueprints and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the user, so whether in that step, whether Nephew system contains everything or is a subset, depends on how we structure our packages, right?
Yeah.
You see, so it depends on how we structure that. And then, okay, in one way, everything is, so all the management part is deployed, right? Or you have the ability to pick your own pieces. So that's probably a flavor that we can do to allow people to have different components, right? Of course, for the release 1, it will be the pieces that we are tested with, right? But if someone wants to do it himself, he could potentially pick and choose, right? Certain components. And then what will happen, the next thing that will happen is an operator will deploy clusters, workload clusters probably, right? So there is a package
that operator, right? That just you said that operator that deploys the cluster, how that gets onto the management cluster. That's
so it's so the blueprint package is registered in Porch when we deploy the first step, right?
Yeah.
And then we have a UI. I don't know whether the UI will work, but there will be that blueprint package. You say, I want 3 flavors of this, right? I want 3 clusters, or I want, I don't know yet how that will look like. Or you could provision a PVS, right? With the upstream package, and then the repository downstream with a set of, let's say, selectors to create your 3 clusters, right? And so these are the 2 options that you have. You have either UI or you have the PVS that you have to your disposal to say, I need 3 clusters. And they point to the blueprint package that contains clusters. And then once you say deploy, what will happen is they So the fan out will happen to PVS, then the PVs will be created. They will clone the package to their with their respective let's say context, and then that will be so in this step you have the choice again to go to approval level, so you could basically apply directly onto a deployment cluster with approval. So you can basically say approve that package, and then once you approve, it will be applied. So in the case of the cluster, to the management cluster, and then in our case, cluster API picks that up with the Bootstrap cluster. We create repos, we create clusters, we create config sync on those clusters, so that we bring up the clusters basically, right?
Yeah.
From the moment someone approves. And so you have to do that probably 3 times if you have 3 clusters.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step is you build the operator, you deploy the operators on those workload clusters. So you create another PVS, which points to the operator package. You say, I want 3 copies, right? And then you go to the same process as the cluster, except that the downstream packages are the real repos that represent the cluster. In the first step, it's actually we create a management repo that on which those packages are, let's say, cloned. So in other words, the difference between cluster creation and, let's say, workload creation is that we have a management repo on the management cluster on which we create 3 packages, each representing a cluster. And in the case of a workload, we have 3 repos that each represent a cluster. So the difference is on the management, for cluster creation, we have a single repo on which 3 packages are created, 1 for each cluster. Whereas for workloads, we have a repo per cluster, and then the artifacts for that are created in there. So that's a slight variation, but the principle in the PVS and PVs are the same. It's just another way to configure it. Just a small flavor that you have to change. The target definition is a bit different.
So
in
is
the
the
PVS.
Bootstrap controller you said, right, Wim? The Bootstrap controller that creates all these workload clusters. Is it also runs as part of the controller manager?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So controller manager now contains the Bootstrap controller, NF topology, specializers.
And also a repo. There is also a repo controller that creates the repos in Git, in Gitea, and the tokens to access them.
Okay. Is that also part of the controller manager?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, that was the piece I was missing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
I'm a little bit worried here that we're diving into infrastructure management. This is really a design issue that we should discuss generally. So I can understand it's useful to add something right now.
Yes, we should revisit that all. Yes.
Yeah.
Because of that's where the O2 IMS, all those things come into the picture, right?
Yeah, everything, how we integrate with, say, Crossplane, for example. It's a big topic, right, with a lot of issues.
Yeah, I think it's more of to your spirit, more is more, just to demonstrate all. I think we should definitely revisit the infrastructure automation part.
Yeah.
Because there are many other things too, right? Because we already have many distributions out there. Nefio will be installed on an existing cluster. In some cases, somebody would probably have their preferred distribution vendor for Kubernetes that they will go to, and they wouldn't probably necessarily be replacing their deployment of their clusters with Nefio for that. They might be using it for other things. So those kind of use cases also have to be considered.
I have a general worry that we're doing a lot of features here by the seat of our pants just because of the density. So people who will be newcomers to Nefio and looking at R1 might think that this is our design, but it's It's not, it's just a demo. So we'll have to be careful with the messaging of some of these things. But it is what it is at this point.
Okay. We are about time. Anyone else has anything? I mean, by the time we have the next meeting, we'll be basically be, are you done? And then tomorrow we'll be starting integrations.
Yes,
hopefully, yeah.
yes. Probably we should correspond on the Slack as well. So
Yeah. So yeah, please communicate on the Slack.
Yeah.
so we don't go to next Monday and say, oh yeah, all this stuff is missing.
Yeah. Yeah, next week, next sprint is going to be the testing and documentation.
Yeah. No, it's exciting, but it's just
Exactly. Yeah, it's
get
coming.
to that day and say, oh, well, nothing is really ready to go. I mean, I guess no one wants another delay because I guess a lot of folks having vacation planned around that time.
Yeah, I think so. Summer, right? Summer vacation.
Yeah. I mean, John will be gone actually after that date. That will delay too, for one thing.
I think many people will take.
Yeah,
some.
I think Tao too. But Tao is actually a little earlier, even.
So, Tal, are you coming to Austin?
In spirit.
Yeah, June, July, not a good time, honestly, to come to Austin.
I don't know. It's a beautiful city, but I'm planning a vacation to my home in June, so we'll see.
Okay.
Everything works out. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, nice. Yeah. Cool. I think we are
Okay.
just over.
Mhm.
Yes. So cool. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes. Yeah, if you have any problems, please put it on Slack. And see you guys next week.
Yeah,
Bye.
cool. Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, bye.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Rado.
Thank you, Rado.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.